So this week's word is war. We'll be discussing exactly our thoughts on war, whether it's necessary or not, whether we know of anyone who is close to us who has been involved in war. So I'd like to start out with just talking a little bit about my thoughts on war. This week is, as we know, is Remembrance Day week. So we've been reminded exactly what sort of position war holds in our society. My thoughts on war, the first thing that I think of when I think of war is all of the destruction, the sadness. It's difficult to find positive aspects of war when we think about it, just based on everything that has happened in our past and everything that continues to happen in our present. You know, myself, I don't really like to think of war that much. I try and keep it on the back of my mind, and some people might call this ignorant, and other people, you know, might share the same beliefs. Others find war extremely intriguing. They like to study all of the strategies and the wins and the losses. I think that it would be interesting to find out what other people have to say about it. So let's go to our respondents and see some of their thoughts on war.
I think about how, although it has such a strong negative impact on the world, people have really come to have such a complacency about it because there's always a war going on, and it doesn't really impact people anymore. There's such terrible stories about war.
War brings connotations of negativity and hurt and pain, and it's important for us to value Remembrance Day so that history doesn't repeat itself.
There's a lot of violence when I hear the word war. Even though there should be peace, war is just an ugly term, and it should be eliminated.
Suffering, wrongdoing, things that are just completely unnecessary, the world doesn't have to do.
Again, suffering, wrongdoing, selfishness, innocent people dying.
I guess the struggle for peace.
Totally unnecessary.
I mean, we have to be realistic, right? We're all out of touch with like World War I, World War II, Vietnam, Korea, all that stuff that happened here, America, or anywhere else. We have to be with what's relevant to us today. And basically that's Afghanistan and that's Iraq.
Just a whole bunch of negativity, really. I don't like the concept. I think it's a
for the most part atrocious, not necessarily crimes, but a lot of big battles that shouldn't happen, per se.
I think of a lot of unjust wars and a lot of just wars.
So the responses that I heard are not surprising. I think that war as a definition is extremely destructive, it's extremely violent, and there are always losses that are difficult to weigh against the pros. War in itself is just such a devastating atrocity to all of humankind, and whether it's necessary or not is something that we really have to look at. I myself battle between my more pacifist, optimistic self that wants to believe that we can negotiate things democratically, you know, talk things out. But I think also that because we've put war into our nature for so many thousands of years and perpetuated it in this vicious cycle of violence and destruction and death, you know, it's difficult to step away from that and find another means of finding a solution for a problem. In that sense, I think that war is inevitable. You know, there will always be that hunger for power, that hunger for greed, religious issues that people feel they need to act out in a way that is extremely aggressive and confrontational because they believe that their way is right. That's enough for me. I'd love to hear what the respondents have to say. Do you think that war is necessary?
I feel war is inevitable, but not necessary. I think that nothing comes of it. You just end up with death, but it's never itself comes to any resolution.
No, I don't.
Considering like the quality of like negotiations going on, yeah, war is necessary.
War is not necessary. Things can be resolved with words.
Absolutely not. I think it's totally unnecessary.
Definitely not. No.
I feel war is only necessary if there's no other options, but I think a lot of things can be mediated through peace and the proper justification through the UN and whatever other situational talks you can have.
You know what? I don't think violence is ever the answer.
No, not at all. I'm opposed.
In certain situations, not always, obviously. There's plenty of examples, especially going on right now, of like wars that are unjust wars or wars that are unnecessary. But there are times that war is very necessary.
So I've listened to the respondents and their thoughts on war, and I'm not surprised. I think that war in itself brings up so many negative connotations of death and aggression and unnecessary violence. But that's debatable. Is it necessary? Does it come to some sort of ultimate conclusion? I myself am torn. I'm torn between the optimism that I have and the pacifist in me that says that we can come to solutions without violence. And then there's the realist that looks around and sees a world full of greed and hatred and misunderstanding. And I have to ask myself, because war has been so prevalent in the last thousands of years of our civilization, can we see a future without that violence in it? And I think that that's something we have to ask ourselves. Whether war is necessary or not, I don't think is a question anymore. Because when I look around me, I see that war, with our human nature as we are going along now, is inevitable. So war, necessary, unnecessary, inevitable? Let's hear what you think.
Because there can be other ways to solve problems, and I just think that war might cause more problems than it solves.
I think in every problem there's a solution, and I think God created us with the ability to speak, to be able to solve our problems rather than create weapons and use it to kill innocent people.
I'm just saying, when like the system is inherently flawed in the way that negotiations are that difficult, like it becomes politically impossible to just solve everything with words, and yeah, at a point war is inevitable. I mean, it's a sad truth, and maybe in the future as a system of negotiations improves, then it won't be. But right now, yeah, it is.
Well, I believe that everyone should be able to come down and talk and work out their problems, not through weapons or of mass destruction or with killing, but being able to compromise and work together.
I don't know, it's hard to say unnecessary because it's human nature and it's bound to happen all the time. I think it's unavoidable, but it's not necessary because it's so easy to solve things with peace, and killing solves nothing. People
in university who tend to think when they hear war, they just immediately criticize, like, I don't believe in war, but sometimes war is a very necessary political maneuver, you know? It's like, when diplomacy fails, sometimes you're left with no choice.